Welcome to the Squared Circle Pit with your host, Rob Pasbani.
Now entering the Squared Circle Pit, she's a comedian, she's a personality, she's a producer, she's a gal about town, and she's my good friend, Katie Rose Leone. Welcome to the Squared Circle Pit. I'm so excited to have you.
Me too. I have so many thoughts and feelings.
That's why we're here. We're here to talk about AEW Full Gear. We're going to go through the entire card, and I also have thoughts and feelings.
I know. I'm pulling up my notes right now because I don't want to forget anything.
Excellent. And I love talking about wrestling with you. I feel like you like very quirky stuff, and I'm it's very endearing for me as well. We have similar comedic sensibilities, so I always enjoy talking to you about this kind of stuff. But I want to know, when did your wrestling fandom start?
Well, this is actually a funny story. So there's two halves of my wrestling fandom. The first started like kind of Attitude Era, and that's because I'm from Long Island, and I had this friend, Casey Distilly, who was also my first metalhead friend, and she was way more boy crazy than me. And then she comes up to me and she goes, "Katie, we have to watch wrestling because it's filled with hot guys with long hair." And I was like, all right. And she was a really big Edge and Christian fan. I think she was more of a Team Christian, which, you know, proves the test of time.
Yeah.
And so I watched a little bit then, and then I fell out. And then in like 2011, 12, I made a friend around the corner from me, and he was really into it. And that was kind of at the height of like NXT being really good and stuff. And I got like really back into it again during that time period as like an adult woman.
Who were your guys in the Attitude Era? Who were you rooting for?
Oh, you know, I love the fucking the Hardy Boys.
Of course. Of course. Same. I wanted to hang out with the Hardy Boys and Lita. They were my avatar in the WWE universe.
I don't know why my brain farted so much. I literally almost started doing the dance because I was trying to like drag it out of my stoner brain. But also,
great.
like, I'm also just like a long time Mick Foley weirdo because I'm from Long Island, and you gotta love him.
Yeah, I love him so much. He was also one of my big fans. He was like in my stable of people.
Yeah.
And like he got me into so much wrestling just following his career, like checking out his stuff in Japan and ECW and and just reading his book. Like, I never liked reading ever. And then I couldn't put his book down, and I was like, oh, maybe I should just stick to like nonfiction and like wrestling stuff, because it's like I'm enjoying reading this. It doesn't feel like a challenge.
I love a memoir, especially when it's somebody really interesting who can barely write. Like
wrestling and music memoirs are my two favorite genres of books, because they are usually so unhinged. Like, there's usually like a moment where I'm like, you know, like, did you just put this in print?
Yeah. You know, this can be used in the court of law, sir.
Right. Yeah. It's so, yeah, like Ric Flair's book is insane because I ended up liking him less after.
Well,
and you know, and this is now 15 years, 20 years ago, before, you know, everything came out.
But
and ever
came
since then,
out, I'm always
I
just
don't
like,
think it came out. Yeah.
Ric Flair has always been Ric Flair, and take that as what you will.
Exactly.
Like,
and he's unashamed. Even in his book, he just talks about what a scumbag he is. So it's just like, oh, you're not a good person. Great wrestler, not a good person.
Oldest story ever told.
And also, so another thing I want to mention is that, like, I feel with 2011 with NXT, because NXT was kind of pulling from all these references, I feel it also, and with the, you know, advancements in streaming, I felt like, me personally, I really got into Japanese wrestling a lot. More 2009, I think, was when I really got into it. But NXT definitely helped. And while I don't really watch NXT anymore, I'm still very much a Japanese wrestling fan. So that's another great thing about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, NXT is just like a totally different product now. But yeah, I agree. There was just so many. That's like how I started really expanding into like Japanese wrestling and indie wrestling and like more than just was presented on TV.
Yeah, because that's where all the fun stuff is. Like realizing, I mean, I knew it from growing up as a wrestling fan, but like the WWE style is only one type of style to present wrestling in. There's so many fun different ways to present it. You just got to look for it.
Just gotta know. Open up a book.
Yeah, it's all with music. It's like with metal subgenres, you know, like, oh, there's the mainstream pop metal, like, you know, Five Finger Death Punch or whatever. But if you like really do a little bit of research, you can dig in and find really, really interesting, unique stuff in the space.
I think the metal comparison's really apt too because there's so many subgenres of wrestling that's hyper specific that one guy is like very passionate about, but if you're a normal on the outside, you're like, this all looks the same to me.
That's a great point too. Yeah, and there's also genres where I'm like, I respect the athletes, not necessarily for me. Just like some of the crazy deathmatch stuff, which we got a little taste of on the show. Yeah.
But I learned something about myself this AEW pay-per-view. So
all right. Well, let's get into it. AEW presented Full Gear this past Saturday at the Kia Forum in LA. LA is a good town, I feel, for reactions. It's a smart wrestling crowd.
I want to ask you something right off the bat.
Sure.
And I'm so glad that I'm talking about this with you. You mentioned the crowd. Was Rick Rubin at this pay-per-view?
100%.
Oh my God. Okay, I kept being like, no, that's not him. That was 100% him.
He's a hardcore. He's as into pro wrestling as we are. I listened to an interview with Joe Rogan. He was on Joe Rogan. And I don't typically listen to Joe Rogan, but when he has a guest that I really care about, you know, I like Rick Rubin. Now, and I will tell you, I left that interview thinking like, oh, Rick Rubin's kind of an idiot. Not me, just because of not like he's like an idiot savant. Like he just cannot function as a regular human being because he's so in his head or whatever. That's what I mean by he's an idiot.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. But I was like, you know, I expected a Steve-O from Jackass and like, you know, C-list comedians or whatever.
Ken Jeong was there.
Yeah, exactly. Well. Dr. Ken. But like I did not expect Rick Rubin.
Yeah, so Rick Rubin is hardcore. Like, did you know that he was the like silent investor in Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the 90s? Like he invested in a wrestling promotion. No. Yeah,
I did not know
he's super into it. Also,
I did not know that.
Another fun Rick Rubin fact is that the Beastie Boys, when he was developing their act, he would make them watch Roddy Piper promos as a way to hone in on being heels.
Well, that is the most delightful piece of information I have ever got. I love the Beastie Boys as a cheeky Jew from Queens. Like I can't. Oh man, that's insane! I had no idea. Oh my god.
Yeah. So on Joe Rogan, he says like, yeah, I watch like 7 hours of wrestling a week, sometimes up to 10 if there's a pay-per-view or something. So I think he watches Raw, SmackDown, and AEW, but I think he's more into WWE.
It's still, my mind's blown right now. I had no idea. Well, the more you know. I'm so glad I brought that up because it was
One more thing I will mention is Rick Rubin has a podcast where it's like long form 3-hour interviews. And one of his guests was Paul Heyman, which highly recommend the listen.
Oh, I'm definitely listening to that.
It's like 3 hours.
Two legendary weirdos.
Yes. And like the first hour is really intriguing because it's Paul Heyman talking about his, you know, coming up and everything. But then the last hour and a half is him going through all the guys he's managed in WWE and essentially like delivering an EPK about why they're great. so I mean,
always the professional.
Yeah.
Paul Heyman's a company man until he dies.
Yeah. So Rick Rubin was there, and that is the other fun thing about LA shows is looking in the crowd and seeing what celebrities decided to roll out of bed, especially at the Kia Forum. So the Kia Forum is in Inglewood for non-LA residents. Inglewood is essentially like Long Island. This is like going to the Nassau Coliseum from
I know.
Manhattan. It's a schlep.
It's a mixed bag with AEW. I do really appreciate that they do these weirder stadiums, and I know why.
Yeah.
There's probably a money and politics.
Yeah, it's probably like
aspect to this.
exclusivity clauses at the other venues.
And when they were first coming up, it was like really smart too, because it's like those communities are the people who watch wrestling. Sometimes it backfires though, and I've noticed some of their pay-per-views. I'm like, there's just like a whole wall empty seats, but this was lit. The audience was on their feet the whole show, because like sometimes you see a pay-per-view and you got those people in the front row with their arms crossed, and I'm like, you paid so much money to be mad. But this crowd was lit. I was into it.
Yeah, and because it's in LA, it's earlier in the day for them, so it's not midnight when the show's over, so they still have some energy. Unlike here, when I went to Full Gear last year, because it was in Jersey, I was just like, oh my God, please end already. I want to go to bed. All right, so let's start. Did you watch the 0 hour matches?
Those I missed.
Okay. Well, you didn't really miss much.
I got the plot point I needed, but besides that,
Right, yeah. The big angle was in the tag match with MJF and Samoa Joe against the Guns. So MJF finally accepted Samoa Joe's help in exchange for guaranteeing him a title shot. And they won. Oh, they won after Adam Cole made a surprise appearance on stage, distracting the Guns, which is the most difficult finish is the entrance theme playing. Like everyone immediately stops what they're doing and has to turn around. And like the roll up is like impossible to kick out of in wrestling lore. So that's essentially what happened. Oh, that wasn't a roll up. It was Samoa Joe choking them out. Yeah. And then after the match, MJF got attacked and, Joe didn't need to help him anymore. His deal was done. So he left. And then, so MJF was essentially stretchered out. And right before the ambulance door closed, he tells Adam Cole, don't let them take away my title. So that's the angle going into the show. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is a lot. Like, I don't know. I was sold on the main event. I didn't need this,
Yeah, I felt the same way at first, where I was like, this seems like a lot, but then I couldn't tell if something had really happened, because I'm kind of a mark. Like, I'm very dumb when it comes to intro. Like, I fall for a lot of stuff, so I'm like, I don't know, maybe someone really did get hurt and they had to call an audible. I don't know. Like,
right. Well, if that's the case, that would have been excusable, but we know that's not the case.
No,
it just seemed very, we could skip ahead a little bit, because then after the first match, Shivani comes out and like says essentially MJF can't compete tonight.
Yeah.
So he forfeits. So the new champion is Jay White. When have they done this before? They've never done a forfeit.
It doesn't make sense. But also, I love when they make Tony Schiavone do anything like this, because Tony Schiavone, I feel in my heart, is always like hanging by a thread before he goes totally postal. One of these days, Tony Schiavone is gonna snap.
He was so
on
disgusted.
Air.
I love it.
he's disgusted with it. But one day, one of these guys is gonna push him too far. I'm telling you, he's on the edge. But yeah, it seemed a little convoluted. I was a little confused, but I love Jay White, so I'm just kind of like, all right, whatever. Like,
yeah, like and also I was like, wait, so now we're not getting this? Like, I wanted to see this match. I was a little confused and annoyed.
My Mark brain was like, I guess something really happened, because this is unprecedented. So why else would this happen? I'm like,
so yeah, because it's so stupid, it doesn't make sense otherwise. Like, so then Adam Cole comes out right before Jay White is declared the winner and said he talked to Tony Khan, and even though he has a fucking walking boot on and he just had ankle surgery 2 weeks ago, he's somehow he's cleared to wrestle, but MJF is not.
That's exactly what my partner said while we were watching it. He's like, wait, MJF can't wrestle and he just sprained his leg? I don't understand.
Like, when they were coming up with this backstage, how did nobody bring this up? It's so antithetical to the first few years of AEW, where they bent over backwards to make sure everything made sense. Like to the point where it was like, it's okay, it's fine, let this go. Now it's like completely opposite.
I've been getting into this lately, but I'm a big AEW fan. Like,
yes.
And also we say
this all with love.
I'm an idiot. I don't know backstage politics. I don't know nothing. I'm just a little guy in a kitchen right now. But I will say that in the last 9 months, things have been so messy storytelling wise. And I'm not saying it's unfixable, but there's just been very weird choices made. And a lot of them, it's feeling a little loosey-goosey messy to me. And this was one of those moments where I'm like, come on, guys. I know what you're capable of. I've seen it.
Yeah, I feel like the last few months, I feel even back at all in, even before that, right before then, I haven't really been connecting with the storylines. I've been connecting with the matches. The matches have been excellent. The matches always deliver, mostly deliver.
The pay-per-views are always so good. I feel like
because there's no story advancements.
They've been doing a really bad job of building things or giving rationale to why certain things are happening. And I give them a little bit of leeway, like when someone gets injured or say someone throws a temper tantrum and gets fired from the company.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's been very random and throwing stuff at the wall. And I wonder if someone's position changed in the company or something, just because it was so, like you said, for the first few years, it was very beat, very clear story building, and then it just all fell to shit.
Yeah, well, this is, there have been changes backstage in the sense of they've brought in new writers to help Tony, one of whom is Jimmy Jacobs, who used to write for WWE. He was Chris Jericho's writing partner when he was doing The List.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a great segment.
Yeah, he was recently at Impact, but he does a lot more hokey stuff, and I think that's because I think the people helping Tony Khan now, and don't hold me to this, is Jimmy Jacobs, Sanjay Dutt, QT Marshall, which it's I don't know. It's not as fun.
Honestly, I don't mind I love Looney Tunes bullshit. I always liked how AEW is here's your hero, it's a cowboy. Here's your bad guy, it's a dinosaur. But it just definitely feels very convoluted lately. It's just think of Chris Jericho. What is he doing? What is he doing right now? He's in 10 different things and none of them really make sense. Anyway, I don't mean to kvetch because this pay-per-view,
we got time to
by and large, is lit. So it's
yes, most of it hit for me. Most of it hit. So let's kick it off. First match: Sting, Adam Copeland, almost called him Edge, and Darby Allin versus Christian, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne. Yeah. I've been enjoying this storyline. Mostly for Christian.
Cage is the best he's ever been.
Absolutely.
I love him. So the first time he went to wrestle a match, I joked to my friends, I'm like, oh, what if he came out in a turtleneck? And he did, because he understands the assignment.
That's right.
And when Nick Wayne first got introduced, I was kind of lukewarm on him, because once again, I didn't like how they introduced him, where they're just this is Darby's little friend, and you have to like him because his dad's dead. But then they got me on board, because if you get some kid to tell his mom "fuck you" on TV, I'm gonna be all right.
I love that so much. I thought his turn was kind of hokey, but his mom's reaction to it was perfect.
Exactly.
She made it so good.
And Christian's just unrelenting commitment to classic heel textbook moves just brings me so much joy. He always comes out, he's gonna dunk on your sports team, your women, your local food. He hates it all. You're all trash. He's better than you. He doesn't earn anything. He hates kids, but he wants to be your dad. It's so good. And I actually don't love Darby, but this match was great. Like,
Yeah, I really enjoyed the match, and I thought it was very smart that Edge and Christian did not touch each other. I thought that was really good because I was kind of like, this is how they're just giving away their first meeting, and they were there. They didn't at all. In fact, they made me want it more, which is really good because initially I did not want it, in the sense of I never liked how they booked their feuds in WWE, but upon reflection, I recognized that the reason I didn't like them in WWE is because WWE always saw Edge as a main eventer and Christian as like a mid-card guy. So
it's the other way around.
So I feel like the feud would always be uneven, and you just always knew like, oh, it's just Edge is just going to always win, Yeah. And ultimately, I agree with you. I think Adam Copeland's status in AEW is pretty like nothing, and like he's not
and
a superstar.
Don't get me wrong, I was
love
super
Edge.
psyched that they brought him in. It totally makes sense, especially with Christian just like terrorizing everyone right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like without this other
But even
stuff,
with Christian, like the first few months he was there, I guess they positioned him with Omega and whatever. I wasn't quite connecting with him as a face.
No,
I'm not
really connecting with him, period. And that's not really like a diss
Christian,
on him.
I was saying, but like it was only once he turned that I was like, now he's figured out, like he created something new, you know, like it wasn't just like right now Edge is still banking on nostalgia as opposed to evolving his character, which I think he needs to do. He needs to create an AEW version. That's one thing that Chris Jericho was very smart about doing when he came. He wasn't the list Chris Jericho.
No,
he was like Le Champion or whatever, like he.
Well, that's what Chris Jericho's so good at. So that's kind of why I'm a little confused right now, because like it's time for him to do the next Pokemon evolution or whatever.
Well, his current evolution is Golden Jets, which is like, leave Kenny Omega alone. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, so what did you any other thoughts about the match?
That spot with Darby like almost killing himself, which is like every match, was pretty sick. But I don't know why he's going to climb a mountain now. Seems like they should let them finish Sting's retirement run before he goes to Mount Everest, but that's just me.
Yeah, he's going to be off TV for a while now because he's training for that with a bad shoulder. Very, very weird.
I have some opinions on whoever's making decisions backstage contractually, but like,
yeah,
like
WWE would never let him do this.
Yeah, just tell him to wait a year. Like that's what I would have said. Tell Jungle Boy no real glass, and Darby has to wait a year. Like
right, exactly.
But anyway, I was surprised how much I liked this match. I on paper thought it was going to be whatever for me, but it makes me excited for more Edge and Christian. I thought the Spooky Boys all looked great, and that I keep calling him Edge. Sorry, I'm like very
we're not AEW. WWE's not going to sue us.
I call Johnny TV Johnny Mundo, which is what he went by in Lucha Underground, which shows you how fried my brain is. Like I can't keep them all apart. But yeah, I thought this was great. I thought it was a really fun match, and like it made me psyched for the pay-per-view, because I'm like, oh, if we're like starting this good, that's like a good sign.
Absolutely. Then we had Hikaru Shida versus Timeless Tony Storm with Luther the Butler. I'm loving this new Tony Storm gimmick. It's just my kind of sense of humor.
The second it got announced, I'm like, ooh, something for the girls. Let's go. And I was like, what gay came up with this? I'm like, no, it's RJ City. Yeah. RJ City came up with this. But it is so good. Her Sunset Boulevard ass is like killing me. She's so over. She really deserves it. And they both like can wrestle real good. And I've had some qualms with the AEW's women's division, mainly that where is it? But this has been so good. Like I love her. I mean, she keeps building on it. It's so silly. Also, Luther as like a Casablanca butler is perfect. Like I can't get enough of it.
I do think it's good that they gave her a heavy, basically, as a butler. I think that's really good. I love the gimmick. I love the black and white intro. I have to say, like, I love Toni Storm as a wrestler, and I know she's still figuring out the character, but I worry that she gets so shticky with the character that it makes the match not as good. You know, like they didn't really have like a work rate match. They had like a shtick match, you know, mostly. And a lot of the shtick felt a little forced. Like when here's how I feel. I could see how backstage it was like, oh, that would be so funny, but the execution, it didn't pan. Like for the finish, how she had the pan.
Yeah, I didn't love the pan. I think. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, I'm not saying this was a perfect match. I'm also just like glad Sheeta's back in the mix, if I could be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you could say this about 80% of the women, but like they don't do enough with her. And like she should be bigger than she is, because she's so, like, I was watching this at my boyfriend's house, and like his niece was there, and she was totally like, oh, she's cool. You know, like she was totally drawn to her. And so like they could totally do more of it.
Right, and like a good example of like a storytelling mishap is like Emi Sakura, right, gave her that big bruise on her chest. But when Emi gets toted out, it's without any rhyme or reason, and no one is like, why is Emi wrestling here? And Emi deserves to have an explanation because she's Emi Sakura. So I feel you on that. I feel like Colt Cabana or someone needs to talk to Tony about how to like find the balance, you know?
Yeah. In general, I think they could use like a good hardcore script supervisor, you know, someone that's like just like, no, we're not doing that, you know, like just put in their foot, and they need to have some override ability on Tony to be like, look, this just is not going to make sense, you know, like something like that. Or like we need to follow up on like what you're saying of like, how are we just dropping this? Because I think a lot with like not the top 3 or 4 storylines, they just abandon it. And then like the week before the pay-per-view, we're like, oh, hey, remember at the storyline, we're doing a match, you know, and it's a little frustrating.
Yeah, that makes me crazy.
Yeah. Then we have the tag team ladder match. Big Bill and Ricky Starks defending against FTR, Dralistico, and Roosh, Kings of the Black Throne. What did you think of this?
Well, even though we know it's only going to be one of 2 guys out of this 4 tag team match out the gate, which is a little frustrating, I love all these guys.
Yeah.
First of all, Big Bill was wrestling in Tim's because he's from Maspeth, Queens. And, of course, I love the Spooky Boys, Big Bad Brody King, or Hardcore Let's Go. They always look great. And I'm a really big lucha mark. So I know some people don't like the lucha style, but I'm a sucker. Get on those ropes, do those favorite flips. They always look amazing. Fire the Revolver. Yes, we've seen them a million times now, but they're great technical wrestlers. I thought this was fun. I don't know if it needed to be a ladder match, but I get why they made it a ladder match. At one point, halfway through the broadcast, Taz goes, just so you know, they have to get the belts to win. I'm like, I know. But I thought it was fun. I mean, these are all such great wrestlers, so it's like cool to just see them do stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. I hated that it was a ladder match. Just because, like I've talked about this on the show before, a ladder match is too dangerous to just be throwing out there for no reason. And like they don't need to be, like you said, they've already had such a rash of injuries having to rewrite the stories. It's like, why put yourself in a scenario? like this match hadn't been built up at all. This is a very last minute match, and you're increasing the risk of injury with the ladder stuff. And
also, they're talented. You don't need that element to it because there's
it's not a wrestling match. It's a stunt show. It becomes a stunt show. There wasn't any like real psychology. It was just move after move. Who could outdo? And I want to be clear. I thought everyone worked super hard. There
Yeah.
were some really crazy spots, like Brody King doing
Oh my God.
the Gonzo
Yeah.
bomb. Oh my God.
I
That was so
screamed.
insane. But I just felt it was unnecessary. Like it didn't serve any purpose other than to do it.
Yeah. And like, I would have liked any number of these guys fighting each other. I just wish there was a reason, and I wish it wasn't a ladder match. That's my take on it. But
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I wasn't mad, you know.
Yeah, save the ladder matches for like the end of a blood feud or like some issue with the belt being held up. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. You know, like, but don't just throw it out there for no reason. And
Yeah.
and I bet, you know, there's going to be a Ring of Honor pay-per-view next month. I bet there's going to be a ladder match on it just because it's like, oh, just throw
Well,
it out
that's
there.
Ring of Honor. That's their whole thing. They're like, ladder match, let's do it. I've seen like 10 Ring of Honor ladder matches in person, I feel. I mean, that's probably an over-exaggeration.
But yeah. I mean, they got to be careful. That's all I'm saying. I care. I care too much.
It is true that people have been getting hurt.
Yeah, the last Ring of Honor
stressful.
ladder match they had, or Dante Martin broke his leg in like the nastiest way for no reason. Like, it's like it was unnecessary. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's wild. And like in general, I feel like you were saying, Tony Khan has to like get these people in line a little bit. Like
That's
hey,
what
stop
I'm
it.
saying.
Yeah,
It's not that hard to be like, you can do this, but not that. You know, I know like they're trying to be like the most wrestler friendly, I guess, company. And but part of that is protecting people from their dumb ideas. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like it's almost like stepdad energy. You don't want the
Yes.
wrestler to get mad at you.
listen, champ, I know I'm never going to be your dad, but I simply can't let you bring real glass on this stage. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And then the next one is the TBS Championship match: Chris Statlander versus Julia Hart versus Sky Blue. This I thought they built this matchup very well.
Yes.
This actually has a story. I didn't care about Sky Blue until she didn't turn evil.
Yeah.
Then I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm glad they did that. I that, you know, she could be, and I understand why the boys like her. She's a very attractive young lady. And
I've heard tell. The boys love Sky Blue. I think she's a good wrestler too. I just would like to give her some direction with her costuming, personally, as a person who thinks she's got a lot of moxie. I'm also really impressed that Julia Hart has worked her took us off like to improve.
Yes.
She's someone who I think needs to be given credit, who started off not that great, and she like those, you know, those moonsaults are clean. Like, she clearly is training constantly. I mean, Chris is a legend. Like, I love her. I think she's the strongest woman they got on that roster right now that isn't, you know,
She's also because she's like really good. I don't want to say carrying, but like leading a match, and like getting a good match out of someone less experienced like a Julia Hart. And I agree. I love Julia Hart's rebrand. Like, and I feel like she's put a lot of effort into her costuming, and her entrance theme is really good. They just like, and she deserved this win, you know, like this was time for her to win. And I'm curious to see what they do with it. If they give her like a monochromatic belt, like with the trios titles, how they made the monochromatic.
That'd be cute. Ones. Yeah. But yeah, I really like Chris Statlander. I want them to stone cold her, man. Like, that's what I want for her.
Yeah, she needs more storyline dedication as well. Like that's another one like where I feel like they just remembered 2 weeks ago, like, oh yeah, we got to put her in like we got to get her match on the show.
Yeah.
Then we announced that Will Ospreay is coming to AEW, which I'm not surprised. I guess they did this because they wanted to hype up the all-in ticket sales that he would be
I
there.
was a little surprised that he's officially signing with them, just because he like straight up was like, I do not want to live in America. And I'm like, understandable. Like, but yeah, it makes sense. They're like, buy those tickets now because we wanted the number to be correct this year that we put on the screen.
By the way, I believe that he said that he doesn't have to move to America. He's going to stay in the UK with AEW. Like Tony Khan said, he'd just fly him in all the time.
No, of course. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the only reason he agreed to it, because I don't blame him. But yeah, I mean, that was cool. He's like the best wrestler in the world. It's like him and Danielson. So
yeah, it should be fun. Yeah, I'm into it. Yeah, there's plenty of matches you could have with like all the main guys on the Raw. Him and Omega need to have like 5 more matches.
I know they announced him like a year out just to up ticket sales, but I also kind of like how it's like, all right, everybody, time to start drinking water and getting ready to actually wrestle. Like, not that everyone AEW doesn't actually wrestle, but it's definitely like a looming threat to have Will Ospreay coming.
Yeah, I guess he's probably going to start in like February after his contract is up. But at Revolution is the next pay-per-view where he will debut. I hope they just don't put him in like with Kip Sabian or something. Which I know him and Kip Sabian are friends, but I just feel like give him a meaningful first match, not just a throwaway.
Well, they really dropped the ball when they first brought Jay White, and like now it's good. But like I just hope they don't do a similar thing.
And then we had, my opinion, the best match of the night, the Texas Death Match, Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland. I thought this went, I loved it. I thought it went too far. I was disgusted.
It's like the best match of the year. And also, I am someone who does not consider themselves squeamish. I've watched a lot of death matches. I watch a ton of really fucked up horror movies. It takes a lot to freak me out. I used to work with reptiles. Like, you know what I mean? That spot, and the one where Adam Page drinks Swerve Strickland's blood, like, there was like my life before that happened, and now there's my life now. Like, I will never forget that as long as I live. That was
disgusting.
That was disgusting, and it takes a lot for me to feel that way.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I was almost taken out of it. My immediate thought was, oh, I hope they both got tested before the match.
I in my heart know that there was a long conversation about this spot and everyone went and did that, but I'm like going against everything. Like, that's how you get syphilis.
Yeah, exactly. This is not like, have you guys taken sex ed? Also with the stapler, that really bothered me because you can't fake that. I guess in my head I was like, okay, maybe they're like short staples, like tiny ones. But regardless, you are piercing skin. I can't imagine how that feels.
When Swerve stapled himself with the gun like the maniac he is, I was like, all right. All right, man, I believe you. Like, this match was amazing. This is like a good story now that Hangman's allowed to have a story again.
Yeah, I'm glad. That's another one where it's like they just totally just abandoned him, I feel, for months. And he was the world champion. I guess there was
a
reason
drama that happened.
That's true.
It's interesting. As soon as that reason disappeared, suddenly the main character's back on the show. But yeah, I mean, it was a great match and it was disgusting and went too far. Like, I feel both ways where I'm like, this is sick. I can't believe this is happening. On my feet, let's go. Also, are you okay? Do you need to talk to a number of kinds of doctors? Like, that spot where the barbed wire went over his face when he was in the corner.
Oh my God.
Because here's the thing too. Hangman Page is beautiful. And if you fuck up his face, AEW, I will be angry.
Also, we skipped over it, but Nana coming out with the Nanettes. Oh,
the hardest working man in show business. When he came out, I was like, absolutely. When he first started coming out, I'm like, I don't know about this guy, but he like completely won me over. Plus, I saw like an interview with him, and I'm like, this dude is all about it. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I guess if I had so I didn't like the staples, but I guess I did like them because of how uncomfortable it made me, But the blood really felt really, really like a little like drinking the blood.
It got a
I don't
little
know.
gratuitous, and I'm like,
Yeah.
John Moxley hasn't shown up yet. Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, but at the end of this, I felt like I needed a cigarette. Like it was like one of those matches. It was so intense. I didn't like the interference though. I will like the Brian Cage interference felt unnecessary.
It did feel unnecessary. I guess they just really wanted to keep that element of it.
I guess they wanted to give Hangman an out. Sorry, not to
no.
But
I mean you're right. But I think that match was so intense that like it did not need any other stuff. All the stuff was there in the ring. The entire Home Depot was there.
Exactly. Yeah, and you had the brick. The brick would have been enough to like if Nana distracted him and they did the thing like with that, if just they took out the Brian Cage interference, I thought it would have been great. But still career making performance for Swerve. Like after this I was like Swerve needs to be world champion. Like, I was just let's go. This is so good. Oh, and with the staple thing, I think what really made it for me, even though I hated it, was when Swerve was no-selling the staples, and then he took the stapler and stapled himself.
That's what I'm saying.
Me?
That blew my mind. I'm like, he's a literal anime villain. This man cannot be stopped. He will come to your home.
Yes. And he
will. You can send the dogs. You could shoot him with a gun. He's going to live forever. You could put him in that coffin 4 more times. He's getting back up.
Yeah, and I think that's why it works so well with Nana being so goofy. It's like they counteract each other perfectly. It's like a yin and a yang. Then I had no idea. Like, it's so funny. Before I would be like, I think that these buffer matches are stupid. But this is the first time where I was like, this could really use a buffer match.
Yeah.
This could use like if there was like a Danhausen match, like a silly little thing.
Yeah.
Like this would have been the moment for it. Instead, we got the Golden Jets versus the Young Bucks. This was one of the matches I was most looking forward to. And honestly, I was a little disappointed. Not that it was bad. It just wasn't great.
I really feel like Kota Ibushi should have been where Chris Jericho was. Now, is he?
I just think he can't. He can't do it. He can't do a tag match.
To say, like, now, can he do it? That's a question. I get why. Yeah. This was like kind of fell flat for me. Don't get me wrong.
Kenny Omega's like my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Like he's the GOAT for a reason. And the Bucks are good too, but there was no reason for this match. It kind of lost me. It's not enough that it's like, and now the Bucks throw a temper tantrum, which like I would like them to just become bad guys because I think that will work for what's happening right now.
They're better as heels. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially Nick. He's such a fucking weirdo. But yeah, I mean, listen, all these guys are talented. Like, it just kind of didn't mean anything to me. And also, what the hell is Golden Jets? What does that name even mean?
It's a hockey reference.
Oh, the Winnipeg Jets because they're both from Canada? Is that what?
Yeah, well, I think there was a specific duo on the Jets in like the 70s or something that were known as the Golden Jets.
I only
and
know
I guess
the
it's
Rangers.
a play on. Yeah, I think it's also a play on the Golden Lovers. So like that kind of. Something like that. But yeah, I don't like the team. I think this is a waste of Kenny. I want Kenny in singles. I understand probably it's because he's banged up. He doesn't want to he wants to save his singles. But this just felt like a wasted opportunity. And, when Omega was in, it was great.
Yeah.
but I just didn't connect with this match at all.
Neither.
And it was like the first time in a very long time that I was kind of bored with the Young Bucks shtick. It felt like very going through the motions, where usually I feel like they put together a good
And I'm
sequence.
kind of a Bucks defender because I feel like it's become really uncool to like them recently. And I'm just like, they usually turn it out. But yeah, I felt this did feel a little phoned in and weird.
Absolutely. And again, also like where is Takeshita? Where
That's a good question. Where is Takeshita? I love him. He's so mean.
Felt weird. uh, and then we get to the main event, and I'm floored because here comes Adam Cole. They're doing the entrance, and I'm just like, look, I know MJF is going to come back.
Right.
When is this happening?
Right.
And it was right at right as the match started, and just then he just comes in, and once the bell rings and it's MJF versus Jay White, my thought wasn't I'm so excited for this, which it was before the pay-per-view started. My thought was this was all completely unnecessary. We could have got to this very point without all of these turns, and it was that nobody believed.
I agree. I do think MJF did a really good job of consistently selling his injury the whole time while doing a great match, but it did feel like there was just like too much stuff. Part of me thinks it's just because everyone loves Adam Cole and they know how probably bummed out he is that he's injured. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, because of that element, I'm also like, is Roddy gonna show up? Like, what's gonna happen? You know?
Yeah.
And when it should have just been like the two good wrestlers are gonna give me a match that is gonna be good.
Well, also, I think because MJF was playing injured, it hampered the match for me because he had to sell it. They couldn't do like a fun, action-packed kind of thing, and I want to put this into context. It's 11:30 at night. I'm an old man. I'm at this point like I want to go to bed.
Yeah.
I did actually end up rewatching this the next morning because I was so cranky. But I feel like that's always the case with the main events. And yeah, I feel like the first 15 minutes, they didn't really do anything. You know, they were just selling the story and the injury, and I was bored. And it did pick up towards the end. I thought that MJF doing that cutter to the outside was crazy.
That I actually was nervous about that because I get why it happened, right? Because they had the gigged table and it fell apart too fast.
Oh, no, that was a different spot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This was Jay White was standing on the apron.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yeah.
And MJF runs, leaps over the top rope, and gives him a cutter onto the floor, which looked so painful. And also kind of, how could he jump that high if he has a bad leg? But the spot you're talking about is maybe the dumbest spot of the night, which is MJF rolls or positions Jay White on the announce table. The announce table immediately breaks, and MJF for some reason decides I'm still going to the top rope, delivers the sloppiest elbow drop,
which is like, you could really break your elbow that way, bro. Like,
it was even worse. He dislocated his hip. I don't know if you heard the news. He dislocated his hip. It had to be put back into place after the match. This is what we're talking about. Stepdad Tony. Like, why wasn't he in the ref's thing being like, do not do this. This is stupid. And like, here's the thing. What did MJF gain from it? You know, like, nobody thinks he's stuff. I just like, you're an idiot.
Like, Jay White's he's not new to this. I feel like they both should have just called an audible on that, done something else.
Yeah, exactly. Done something else. Throw him into the fucking... It didn't add anything to the match to do it, you know? What did you think about the last few minutes?
I like Jay White's feud, but I am... The storyline's starting to feel a little weird for me.
Yeah, I didn't like the storyline at all, honestly. I hated that he stole the belt. I never liked that storyline when you just take the belt, you know? And
I kind of do because I think it's just like such a shitty like high school bully thing to do. But it doesn't work. It's better when it's someone who sucks at wrestling. Jay White's really good. And so it's kind of frustrating to have like interference angles with him, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And these are all of these guys are very, I like everyone. Again, it's just the writing that kind of took me out of it. And Jay White, I think, like we're both saying, we're both on the same page here. He's one of the best in the world. And I feel like he hasn't really shown it. Like he was the best heel in New Japan, you know, like he was so great.
Top tier. And I do really like, his stable. It's like really unhinged. Everyone's on point.
Yes.
But I think they just need to like make him scary, like as in like a guy to beat. Like it's okay for him to be silly scary, but like he needs to be propped up more as a force to be reckoned with. Like he needs to be more like a Samoa Joe level like opponent. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, and I think in general, MJF is watering down his reign with all of the shtick, like all of the schlocky.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So I have a very less organized, less popular, terrible SEO wrestling show I do with my friend Lawson sometimes.
Huh.
And it's on break because I'm moving. But we were talking about this, that MJF is in very dangerous territory where if he doesn't play his cards right, he's going to be Hulk Hogan. And it's like, because he's not with the right, obviously he's a very talented wrestler, but he's doing shtick. He's in
the kangaroo
everything
kick.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Like he's everywhere for some reason. Like I think they need to boil down his storyline, and I think they need to, plan out a well thought out time to get him back to just being a shithead, because that's where we need him to be. As someone who grew up on Long Island and is very intimately aware of the theater kid bully, this is a bad man and he needs to be mean.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I'm okay with the face thing, but it has to be serious. It's too
sticky. Because we've seen him. He's a machine. The man can wrestle.
Yeah.
He doesn't need like.
Yes. And this type of stuff is for the mid card. It's not for the world title. Like the world title match should be the best match on the show.
And it kind of worked when Adam was still wrestling with him, because it was like silly that they become friends. And like, I was hoping where it was going is that when it came down to it, they really would do a real like intense wrestle match. But instead, I don't know. It's just a little silly, unnecessarily. Not with Jay White. Okay,
yeah, so that was the show. What was your overall feeling?
I know I complained a lot, but that's how I am. But I overall really enjoyed it, more than I thought, because I'm a little cynical when it comes to wrestling. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I did think the Bucks Kenny Jericho match was the weakest point in the card. I hope that they actually work on the storylines, because the actual wrestling was so great. And it's like, look at all these people you have. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully with the Continental Classic now, with this pseudo G1 that they're doing, hopefully we get back to that. And even with that, they haven't even announced 8 of the 12 competitors. I guess they're announcing them on Wednesday, right before. So everything is just so rushed.
It's so rushed, and yet they have like 15 TV shows. They have 3 TV shows. You can figure it out. Like,
yeah, exactly. I guess we'll see where it goes on Wednesday. Are you watching WWE at all? How do you feel about Survivor Series this weekend? Any thoughts? Really quick.
So I haven't been watching WWE really at all for like a year and a half now, maybe more, because they really got so bad it became unwatchable. And when AEW came on the rise and they were doing such a good job, it was kind of, there's only so many hours in the day. However, I usually watch pay-per-views, maybe sometimes the day after so I can scroll. But now that there's this stable that is Io Shirai, Asuka, Kairi Sane, Bailey, and Dakota Kai, I've like never been more gay in my life. Like, it's like my dream come true. I can't believe that they did that. I'm so happy about it that I'm like, I guess I'm going to watch. Because the thing about WWE is they have an amazing women's roster. And that's something AEW is kind of like really dropped the ball on.
Yeah.
So
especially
I will probably watch some of it. But like I said, probably the day after so I can scroll through.
Absolutely, I get it.
I don't really sit through full WWE pay-per-views anymore because I emotionally can't handle it.
Especially, yeah. And the pacing is so much slower.
It's so slow.
Yeah.
And there's so much of it.
I might go to a bar. My friend is doing a bar thing in
That's fun because then there's other things to do.
Yeah. So, yeah, for a WWE show seems like a good, you don't have to focus and like hear the commentary. You could just it's a party atmosphere. Is there any other fun wrestling that you're watching at the moment? I know you said you're moving, so you're probably don't have a lot of depth.
I haven't been keeping up with a lot of stuff. I mean, I usually keep tabs on New Japan, even though they're like collapsing right now. And Stardom are usually the ones that I watch. But yeah, I haven't really watched much else lately.
I'm like stretching here.
I haven't had any time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of, there really hasn't, I mean, I guess that there's way too much wrestling now. I used to think I need to keep up with all of it. Now I give myself some slack. Like, I'll watch what I watch,
Yeah, that's my whole vibe. I mean, I try to keep up with AEW just because that's like the one like kind of like weekly show I'll watch, like Dynamite or whatever. But generally speaking, I'm just kind of like, all right, I'll watch this, I'll watch that.
Yeah.
It's only so many hours.
I'm the same. Dynamite is my one guarantee. The rest, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Katie, it's been so fun talking to you and hearing your point of view on the pay-per-view. Always fun discussing wrestling with you.
Thanks for having me.
And
I love to yell.
Where can people check out your sporadic wrestling podcast?
Well, it has the worst SEO on the planet. It's called Leon's the Professional Wrestling Podcast. And you can find it on yeah. And it's on Spotify and YouTube. I haven't been there this month because I am moving and I'm just like, I simply can't. And like our whole vibe is we kind of just talk about what we feel. Like usually if there's like a big pay-per-view, we'll talk about it. We do mostly a lot of Japanese wrestling. So if that's something you're into, that's like
nice.
A lot of what we talk about. So but it's definitely very silly and very low stakes. We claim to know nothing and be idiots. So and neither of us are on.
Awesome. I will link to it in the description of this episode if my viewers or listeners would like to check it out. Katie, thank you so much. And I hope you have a very easy move and then you can come back on the pit.
Yes, thanks for having me.